What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another off-season episode of the Take 3 podcast. I think it's off-season episode number 2. Last week, we spent a lot of time diving into the quarterbacks and their situations and where those guys could go. This week, we're going to touch on every other position outside of quarterback, right? I think spending an entire episode on the quarterbacks, there's no reason to go back to the well. We kind of gave our teams where we think they're going to go, what's going to happen with each of those guys. But there's a lot of positions here, and there's a lot of guys out on the market that could be switching teams, could be getting franchise tag, could be getting big deals, right? So I thought it was perfect to kind of dive into this in week 2 of the offseason. So, I mean, obviously, Alex, how are you feeling jumping into this free agency thing? I mean, I think we were both talking about it beforehand, dude. It's honestly, it's a crapshoot. Like it really is. There's teams that don't have cap space that we're going to be able to restructure trades, cuts, right? The Rams have nothing, but if they move Jalen Ramsey, they'll have money. So, I mean, this is going to be a true crapshoot. We're going to fire names, teams, but I mean, I expect things to go completely opposite of how we say, to be honest.
Yeah, this is like peak NFL offseason. I love this stuff for the NFL nerds because it's just like a bunch of hypotheticals and we're all really just guessing. Yes, some are pretty good guesses and some aren't, but like you said, yeah, some teams are in cap space hell, but like it changes so fast. You move players around, the draft hasn't happened yet. So it's really hard to judge and tell, but it's just fun conversation to kind of figure out, see if we can piece some of these puzzles together.
Yep, for sure. So let's dive in. First position on here. We're gonna start it out with the running backs for sure. First name, I guess. Let's start it off with Josh Jacobs. He is the NFL's leading rusher, 340 carries last year. Was second in the league carries wise, but he led the league in yards, 1,653 yards, 12 touchdowns. The guy had a monster year. He has a lot. He could have a lot of suitors. I mean, for me, I think he's going back to the Raiders. Everything. If you would have asked me like a couple weeks ago or maybe a couple months ago, where things kind of seemed a little bit like on ice with the Raiders. I could easily see him moving on, but I don't think, I mean, Josh McDaniels, I don't think he wants to, reset at quarterback and running back, right? If you go get a young quarterback or whoever you get, you're going to want to have that kind of safety blanket in Josh Jacobs that you can just pound the rock with if needed. But where do you think are some good fits for Josh Jacobs? I do have a couple other teams in mind, but I want to hear your fits as well first.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs is like a really interesting one because he could like shift the balance. We're talking about the leading rusher. But it's just interesting because I think if the Raiders are smart, you franchise tag him. Yes, you obviously try and work out a deal, but like paying running backs has not been real kind to the teams that have paid big contracts to running backs lately. So to me, I think the smart decision for the Raiders is to franchise tag them and kind of just try and go all in. There's a lot of other options on the roster because they have a lot of good weapons. So like the Raiders are kind of closer than I feel they're far away, which is what I think is going to happen. But
Mm-hmm.
some other teams that are really intriguing. The Bears have all the cap space in the world. It'd be a very Bears move to sign a running back with 300 plus touches coming off and giving him a ton of money. But if you're Josh Jacobs, I think you take that. The other interesting ones is the Lions due for an upgrade. I think you're kind of in a similar position you would be with Vegas, right? Like a good team that could potentially make the playoffs, maybe win a playoff game, but you're probably not a true contender. But like at that point, like, do you really want to leave Vegas to go to Detroit? And then the other two that are kind of interesting. So like this one won't happen at all, but like if you want to try and win a championship, Eagles backfield, phenomenal roster. You plug him in there. It just that would be asking Josh Jacobs to not make the correct amount of money he deserves to make. So that's not going to happen. But like that's a really fun hypothetical. And then my absolute favorite, which I think is more realistic and could be really interesting, is another team instead of the Raiders that maybe would go all in would be the Miami Dolphins. You have a ton of weapons. You got Tyreek Hill, you got Jalen Waddle. The GM for the Dolphins, Chris Greer, is on record of saying we are not rushed to sign Tua to an extension. So that means Tua might not necessarily be the quarterback. There's a scenario where Miami goes all in and tries to get one of those vets, a la Aaron Rodgers. You add Josh Jacobs to that with the weapons. You do need to upgrade the offensive line. The defense is still pretty good, but there's a scenario where the Miami Dolphins say, screw it, let's go all in. And Josh Jacobs is part of that. Like, I don't think it's the most likely thing, but Josh Jacobs with Miami, you had Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, you maybe a different quarterback outside of two, and all of a sudden, like the Miami Dolphins would be super fun. So, like, that's like my favorite landing spot for Josh Jacobs would be the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, you throw him in there into that mix, that'd be a lethal offense, right? You got a guy that you can pound the rock with, and then sets up the play action game. It kind of gives Tua everything. But dollars and cents wise, I don't think
Yeah.
Miami, right? That is like perfect. I don't know if they'd be able to clear enough to like make it match. The Bears are an interesting one though. I didn't really put down the Bears, but I mean they do. That's the team that has all the money in the world, right? They have 100 million in cap space, right? Justin Fields is probably dying. He's salivating for a couple weapons, and they'll probably sign 8 more defensive guys this offseason and leave him out to dry. But I never really added that one in. One last team I like as well is Carolina Panthers. They ran Deonta Foreman, I think Chuba Hubbard as well, right? They moved off Christian McCaffrey. They're going to probably get a young quarterback in the draft, and what's best for a young quarterback, right? To get him a reliable running back that you can hand the ball off with. Frank Reich there as a coach, he probably knows that. So I mean, they have probably a little bit of space, and they're due for that upgrade as well. If they don't want to bring Deonta Foreman back or keep running it with Chuba Hubbard, that's a spot for him. On to the next guy, Saquon. Where do you think does Saquon go anywhere besides New York? Last I heard, they're getting close. They're kind of hammering out the numbers. Like I think New York, they'll franchise tag Daniel Jones. We talked about it last time, and then I think they'll work out a 4 year or so deal with Saquon Barkley. Like I don't see him leaving New York. Kind of had a resurgent year this year. It was good to see out of him. But do you think he will go anywhere, or where do you think if it was not New York, where would fit for Barkley? I mean, the Eagles obviously. I don't think it ever happens, but right, he went to Penn State. Those roots are always going to be there when there's a Penn State guy, right, a Pennsylvania guy, come there. Could be a fit. But do you think he leaves New York though, realistically?
I really don't. Like Saquon in New York just makes the most sense. Not to mention him personally, career wise, like he's built his career there, and New York has one of the biggest markets slash economies. So when it comes to making money outside of football, it's really hard to beat New York. It's like it's probably the number one location for it. And it's really hard to see Saquon not being a giant. The Eagles are always interesting just because of the roster, but just like the Josh Jacobs things, like you're asking them to take less money to win. And those guys aren't at that spot in their career yet, right? Maybe after this next contract they sign, they'd be more open to that kind of idea. But for me, I think Saquon's a giant. The only other team I had down was the Chicago Bears for the money reason. Once again, don't think it's smart, but if there was a franchise that's going to throw a big contract at a running back, to me, it'd be the Chicago Bears. And like if you're Saquon, maybe it is smart to just kind of choose that contract at this point over staying in New York. But like I think it's all New York. They feel so good after last season. You know, they made the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They want to build on it. It's really hard to imagine Saquon not being a giant.
Yeah, facts. I mean, honestly, him in that backfield as well with Justin Fields. We know what Justin Fields does as a runner. Like that beats some pretty nasty RPO read option stuff. Do I trust whoever the play caller is? I think it's Luke Getzey to actually have all of that plus an O line. I don't know. So that is interesting. The Bears. I mean, I have the Bears for you'll hear this all like episode. They have so much money and they have so many holes that like I have a lot of Bears fits. Another guy I don't really see going anywhere else. Tony Pollard. Jerry Jones doesn't let him lead the building, right? They'll franchise tag Tony Pollard, I would imagine, in the next week. They have a week to get it done. Free agency doesn't start till the 15th. But do you see Tony Pollard going anywhere else? He's another guy, right? If he went down to Miami, he would probably be pretty nasty in that backfield. Same fit for the Bears, right? But do you realistically do you see Jerry Jones letting that guy go after this year? Obviously, the leg injury is a concern, but they said he should be ready for training camp, so I don't think they're eyeing it up as a concern.
Yeah, I think Dallas feels pretty confident with Tony Pollard. I don't think they let him leave the building. He's arguably their best offensive player on the field last year. He was just so explosive. He deserved way more touches throughout that year, honestly, and he had a good amount of touches. Zeke is just not really that guy anymore to me. I think Zeke needs to be like a third down, short yardage back and not a ton of touches. But with that being said, I don't think Dallas lets Pollard go anywhere. I think they also add a running back, whether it's through the draft or free agency this year as well. It's just, the question of is his explosiveness going to be there post injury? Dallas feels confident that it will be, but you already nailed the second team. If it wasn't in a world where it wasn't the Dallas Cowboys, it'd be Miami for me. Dolphins are the other team I have down. I just think yeah, Miami needs to upgrade the offensive line as well. But like with all their weapons, if they had a really efficient run game, because they had some older backs, yes, they were fast last year, but they were beat up a lot. If you had a consistent guy, Tony Pollard being one of them, I think Miami would be so lethal. But just like Saquon, I don't think their home franchise is going to let them leave the building. You
Yeah.
really never know with Dallas. Dallas does some questionable things at times, and Jerry Jones likes to make splashes, but I'd be really shocked. I think it's more likely they just straight up cut Zeke, which won't happen either, than not getting the Tony Pollard thing done. Like Pollard's got to be a Cowboy next year.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Another guy on there, I have him on the slide as well. Kareem Hunt. He kind of spent like right. He went off obviously the off the field stuff with him when he was with the Chiefs. Eventually got cut, and then he went to Cleveland. Obviously, spent the last 4 years there, which is crazy to think that he's been there for 4 years now. Had a productive 2020, and then kind of he's played that backfold to Nick Chubb, right? He seems to like find his way into the goal line, which is hilarious to like steal a couple touchdowns from Nick Chubb. But obviously, everybody thought last year trade deadline he would get moved. He did not. Where do you think good fits Kareem Hunt? I have down Dolphins as well, right? That's kind of a good guy in that range where I could realistically see them getting him. Like that's a solid upgrade. I thought trade deadline last year they should have pulled the trigger and not ran the Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson train the entire year. They didn't do that. Maybe they knew, hey, he's going to hit free agency anyway. Why give up picks? Uh, Another team for Kareem Hunt, I have Bills, right? If he wants to go out there and, you kind of chase a championship, get your kind of, you won't get a lot of money, you won't get a ton, but you'll be in there competitive, kind of, you'll be able to be that guy because they're most likely going to move off of a Devin Singletary. James Cook was all right, but he had some fumbling issues, and I don't know how sold they are on him. And then another team, the Broncos, right? Javonte Williams tore his ACL, tore his knee up. What did we see after that? They really struggled to have that second back. They went through Melvin Gordon. That dude was absolute garbage, got cut. They really struggled to find that second back. So, I mean, sliding him into there gives them two good backs, gives the guy, they don't have to rush Javonte Williams back onto the field, and then it gives them a good duo, right? And I think he'd still be able to get a lot more carries in Denver than he would like in that two back fold that he was in with the Browns, right? He'll get a lot more touches, I think, there.
I actually really like that idea slash spot. Like I could see that working well. And Sean Payton wants running backs. He's going to rely heavily. He's going to take the ball out of Russ's hands more, probably get him in play action. So to me, that's a really good choice. The other spot, because I had those teams as well down. I like those. I like the Bills quite a bit. But the other spot I had for Kareem Hunt was like the Dallas Cowboys, going back to Dallas. I think he'd be a really good fit for Dallas. The way he runs, just hard, straightforward. I think a Kareem Hunt, Tony Pollard backfield would be pretty damn lethal for a Cowboys offense that was pretty damn good already. But like there was times where they didn't rely on the run game. And I think adding a Kareem Hunt would like do wonders for him. I think Kareem Hunt would be a really good Dallas Cowboy. I just something about that. I could see that being a really good fit. It just would be dynamic. All they would have to do is stay healthy. And then the other team I had for Kareem Hunt was the Raiders, assuming Josh Jacobs is not a Raider, because once again, Kareem Hunt runs extremely hard, just straightforward, up and down, north south. To me, is kind of similar to Josh Jacobs. So, like, if for some reason the Raiders didn't get a deal done with Josh Jacobs, I feel like Kareem Hunt would be a pretty good replacement.
Yeah, I didn't add that on, obviously, because I factored in Josh Jacobs was going back. But yeah, if they do lose Josh Jacobs somehow over the next week, that'd be a good one. And I didn't really factor in the Cowboys as well because I don't know how many like what are the touches situation, right? Because you'd imagine with the franchise tag, they're gonna want to see can Tony Pollard actually be that guy right when he comes back off injury. But I mean that gives them that two back fold as well, which we see most teams going with. So I mean I would kind of hate to see that as an Eagles fan and have to deal with
Yeah.
that twice a year. Could be a nasty one, but I definitely didn't have that charted down. Last guy running back wise I have on the list of my list at least is Miles Sanders. I mean, we saw he kind of got fizzled out a little bit in the Super Bowl. I definitely kind of when I was watching the Super Bowl, I was like, this definitely feels like the end of the Miles Sanders era. He kind of had that fake fumble. I think he actually did have a fumble to start off the rip that went out, and then he had that like fluky fake fumble that got overturned for the touchdown. But it's kind of seems he had a career year, 259 carries, 1,269 yards, 11 touchdowns. They finally Nick Sirianni let him carry the rock. He finally had a coach that was going to let him, be that guy in the backfield. He showed he was productive. He concerns me in the pass game. He still really hasn't improved at all as a pass catcher. He did, yeah, he only had 78 yards out of the backfield, 26 targets, 20 catches. So he's really a non-factor out of the backfield. Teams for Sanders though that I think, I don't think he's come back to the Eagles. It could be on the table. It'd have to be a reduced salary. He wouldn't get the full bread. He did say that he loves Philly, right? But I don't know if it's going to work for Howie. Dolphins as well. Dolphins kind of need any upgrades, so the Dolphins are going to be slotted in for any of these guys, and it would be a good fit for them. Bills, right? If you wanted to go there, still be in that Super Bowl kind of contender fold where he'd probably get touches as well, similar to Kareem Hunt, right? He'd probably be that guy in their backfield. And then Panthers as well. They need a running back upgrade. Frank Reich was in Philly, so that could be a fit for Miles Sanders. I mean, there's a lot of other spots if the Bears wanted to go crazy and give him an offer, the Bears could do it. But Miles Sanders, I definitely expect him to be out of Philadelphia this offseason.
Yeah, I think he nailed it. I'd be really surprised if Sanders is back. It would have to be like he's just loves Philly that much and wants to win a Super Bowl, honestly. It wouldn't be like the best career move for him. And I believed in Sanders a lot. It just never fully came together to be like a true lead back. The passing game never fully came together, and he would fumble when it mattered most. But he's still good. He's still a good back. He still could be really helpful for a team. And like the one team I have Miles Sanders now was for the Carolina Panthers. There's some roots there. They're rebuilding it. They could, believe it or not, be a contender for the AFC South and win right off the bat next year and be a playoff team because that division's all jumbled. We have to see what happens quarterback wise for him. But yeah, I don't think he's an Eagle. I think Carolina's a good fit. Miles is just an interesting one. I don't think he's going to be a lead back. He's going to be a complimentary back somewhere. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands. And then before we move off running backs, I just have one more name because speaking of Carolina, I think they're moving off Deontay Foreman. They'll keep Chuba Hubbard. But with that being said, I think Deontay Foreman would be a fantastic fit for the Buffalo Bills. They have such a hard time finding a run game. Devin Singletary is not going to be back. And the way Foreman runs is north-south, just beating people up. You take Buffalo in playoff time in the cold, take some off Josh Allen running, and once again, there's still a passing game. So like, it's not like you need Deontay Foreman to come in and be like the focal point of the offense or do a bunch. He would split with James Cook, but I just think he'd be a great addition for the Bills in the red zone when it's cold, just north-south bruiser, need to chew some clock, just things that the Bills really struggle with offensively. I think he could fill in those running holes like pretty damn well.
For sure. I did not have him didn't have him charted on either. But yeah, Bills make sense. Broncos as well, right? Any of those teams where
Yeah.
it's cold weather, right? Where you just need a guy to carry the rock. Kind of similar fit. Same for Miles Sanders. I didn't write down Broncos, but he could go there as well. Kind of similar fit. Sean Payton's a smart dude. They need a running back to kind of be that complimentary when Javonte Williams comes back. But let's keep it moving. On to the tight ends. I only have 3 guys down. Honestly, I'm not going to talk about the Irv Smiths of the world, guys that were like super athletic at Alabama and then they never really panned out when it gets to the league. But the cream of the crop, obviously, Dalton Schultz, Mike Gesicki, and Hayden Hurst. Start off with Dalton Schultz. Do you think he goes back to the Cowboys? I don't personally because I think they're going to spend that franchise tag to keep Tony Pollard around to kind of extend their window to get a long-term deal done. So I think that spells the end for Dalton Schultz in Dallas. Teams for him, the Colts. You always need a good tight
Mm-hmm.
end, right? You're going to go get your young quarterback. You're going to want a tight end to security blanket. I have Lions down as well. We saw them trade TJ Hawkinson, right? So they're gonna it was a weird trade to trade him in division, but they're kind of gonna need a guy to fill that role as well. And then I wrote down the Commanders, which is a weird one. They have Logan Thomas. They can move on from Logan Thomas, go get Dalton Schultz. You're gonna run Sam Howell out. You've seen what Eric Bieniemy kind of you kind of figure what his philosophy is going to look like when he heads in there with Sam Howell. He's going to want to utilize the short passes, utilize the tight end, right? Get a guy for Sam Howell, get going because he's not going to have kind of the mobility in the O line that he had in the Chiefs game. But I like Commanders, Lions, Colts for Dalton Schultz. I think he's done in Dallas. I just don't think the money is going to be there.
Yeah, I have the Colts and Commanders down as two of my teams for Dalton Schultz as well. I think they're really good fits for everything you listed. And then the other two teams I have that you didn't mention is in division, the New York Giants. I think you add a tight end for Daniel Jones and Brian Dable. I think that would go really well. Then he gets to play Dallas twice a year. I think that would be a good fit. And then the other one would be adding a weapon for whoever's going to be the quarterback for the Panthers. Next to DJ Moore, they'll need to add a second wide receiver as well. And obviously, they're looking to add a running back. They're just retooling their offense, building a fantastic coaching staff. And I think Dalton Schultz as like a safety net for the young quarterback at tight end would be a great addition for the Panthers.
Yep. Yeah, those are good ones. The Giants, it's funny because now that you bring up Mike Gesicki, I could have put down Giants for any of these guys. They definitely need a tight end, right? I think they were using some guy named Daniel Bellinger at tight end last year.
Yeah.
Like they didn't, yeah, there was no tight end there, right? They had Evan Ingram for a while. He moved on, but yeah, Mike Gesicki, Dolphins, they're definitely moving on. His usage went way down since Mike McDaniel got there with the 2 guys on the outside and whatever type of run game they tried. But Mike Gesicki from the Dolphins, so that's the first team I have for Gesicki, the Dolphins. Get him with Brian Dable. I think it's a solid match. He's athletic. We've seen what he can do when he gets the ball. I like him there. A good one as well. The Chargers. They don't have the money right now, but they're going to move off Khalil Mack. It sounds like they could potentially move off Keenan Allen. And they ran out Gerald Everett it last year, 58 catches, 555 yards, and 4 touchdowns. If you instantly slot in Mike Gesicki into that offense with Kellen Moore, you've seen what he's done with Dalton Schultz already, right? In Dallas. I mean, that's kind of a match made. They'd have to work the money out, but I think that's a solid fit. And then the Lions again, they need a tight end. You move off of TJ Hawkins and you give him to the Vikings for whatever they gave him for. So I think he could slide in there, help Jared Goff, and help those guys, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that whole offense as well in Detroit.
Yeah, I think those are great locations. The big one for me, you already nailed it, was the Chargers. I think he just fits the Chargers really well. We saw Mike Gesicki doesn't really fit Mike McDaniel's scheme in Miami last year. I think he goes in, he fits with the Chargers perfectly. Yeah, Kellen Moore at offensive coordinator. I think he could have a really big year in LA. To me, that's the number one spot for Mike Gesicki. And then the other team I have that you didn't mention was the Tennessee Titans. They're kind of in flux right now, right? They're kind of we don't know if they're going to go full rebuild or try and like bounce back, but either way, they need more weapons offensively. You got rid of AJ Brown. The other Titans haven't really worked out as well. They're going to need to just add weapons all around in the passing game, and I think that would be a great fit for Tennessee off play actions. You get Mike Gesicki open. I think he'd be a good Titan as well.
For sure. It's just I don't know. I didn't put down the Titans because like that's a weird sell to a guy that's been in Miami for so long. It's like if you've been in Miami and then you get New York or you get LA, it's like, do I want to
That's
go
fair.
to Nashville, Tennessee? I've seen that offense. They like double down on Ryan Tannehill, but it is a good one. Like they need somebody. They cut Robert Woods. They have Traylon Burks. Like they need weapons. They're since they gave us AJ Brown, they're devoid of weapons. They have nothing out there besides Derrick Henry. But last guy on the list, Hayden Hurst, obviously had a solid year for the Bengals. I mean, stat-wise, won't really show it, but he was good blocking. He made some timely catches, 52 catches, 414 yards. He is going to be 30 by time season starts. Hayden Hurst, I do have charted down. One of the few guys, Bengals, he could go back to the Bengals, right? It worked out. It was perfect, him and Joe Burrow and those guys. Then I have Packers as well, right? Regardless of what happens with Aaron Rodgers or if they keep Jordan Love, they can move off of Tanya and bring in Hayden Hurst. He fits that mold for them. Lions, Panthers, any of those teams that need a tight end to kind of fill a gap as well could fit him. But I see him kind of staying in. I don't know. I think he'll stay in Cincy for sure. I think he's a guy that I'm confident will stay with the Bengals. He's run with Joe Burrow. They got a good opportunity to win a championship, and I think he feels that.
Yeah, I think he pretty much nailed that one. Based like the only team I had outside the Bengals was the Packers for all the reasons you said. I think regardless of who's quarterbacking the Packers, they need to add a tight end. Tunion's a free agent. I don't think he'll be back. So like I think that fits really well. With Hurts being older too, you don't necessarily need to be like a big investment either. It could be for just 1 to 3 seasons. So yeah, I like Hayden Hurts either as a Cincinnati Bengals stand to chase that Super Bowl or the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, facts. So moving off the tight ends, let's jump straight into the wide receivers. Honestly, might be one of the weakest wide receiver classes that I've ever seen. I mean, there's some guys out there, but it's super weak. Starting off, Jacoby Myers is probably the cream of the crop this year, which is insane for me to sit here and say. Patriots guy, I've heard that he can get upwards of 15 to 20 a year. And then when I think about that type of money, I'm like, what teams need wide receivers? Well, bringing it up straight, Houston Texans, new coach D'Amico Ryans. I think Brandon Cooks, they might convince him to stick around. I don't know. I saw that earlier. I was reading it this morning that like he's kind of changed the culture and Brandon Cooks is open to sticking around. But either way, they still need a receiver. Their second guy is John Mechie, who's obviously coming back from his cancer scare last year. He missed the entire last year. So they're going to need a receiver upgrade. They have money to spend as well, right? This is a team that they have money. They're going to probably be bringing in a rookie quarterback. So let's surround him with guys and weapons. Another team, Giants. They made the playoffs with the worst wide receiving core I've ever seen. So naturally, the Giants, the money might get dried up a little bit, but I mean, we've seen teams in the past be able to, maneuver the cap and work the cap to get guys and get pieces onto their team, even after franchising Daniel Jones. And obviously, we think they're going to re-up with Saquon. And then last team, Bears. Bears are going to be on here a bunch for these weapons and O lines and D lines because they have nothing, right? Their best guy was Darnell Mooney. I like Darnell Mooney, but I probably like him as a number 2 wide receiver, right? If I'm trotting out there and Darnell Mooney's my number 1 guy, I'm not feeling good about the offense. So if you toss him in there with Justin Fields, you got to get Justin Fields some weapons at some point. So the Bears, I would say, is a solid fit. Or I don't even know if a solid fit, but it makes sense because he's going to get targets. He's going to be out there to make plays for the Bears if he goes there.
Yeah, I like the Bears fit. Jacoby has shown that like if he's get enough targets, he's giving you at least 50 to 60 yards a game, which is way more than the Bears are getting consistently anyway. Um, the two teams I had down for them, one of them you did mention, the Houston Texans. I think the Texans are actually an interesting free agency destination now because, like, to me, I got faith in D'Amico Ryans and what they're building. Like, they're actually going to rebuild now. Like, the last 2 years, I didn't believe that at all. It just felt like Houston's just going to lose. Who they had at play in place for head coach was not going to be long term answers. But now it feels like D'Amico Ryans could be a long term answer, long time Houston Texan. He has great success as a coach. He's coming back. So I think like he's changing the culture, like you mentioned. I think people are going to be actually excited to maybe go to Houston for the first time in a few years. And I think Jacoby Myers would be a great pick. You get a young quarterback in there. We'll see who it's going to be. And like they need weapons. So I like the Houston Texans a lot. And then my other team was the Green Bay Packers. As we see Allen Lazard in the top left corner, we'll talk about him. We'll see if he's back. Once again, regardless of the quarterback, I feel like they need to add somebody. And I think Jacoby Myers would be a good fit. The interesting thing with Green Bay is like they're terrible about free agency, right? So like I could see him not signing people and then just trying to draft and build. We'll see what Green Bay does. There's just such a big question mark because of the Aaron Rodgers thing. But I do think, especially if you lose Allen Lazard, you need another wide receiver. I think Jacoby Myers could fit in pretty well in Green Bay.
For sure. So, I mean, I'll pivot. I had Juju next, but let's do Alan Lazard. So, yeah, I mean, Alan Lazard, 27 years old. He's kind of, I don't know, one of my buddies said he could be the best guy in the class. He's physical, he runs, runs
Mm-hmm.
the routes. He's that guy. He could obviously go back to the Packers. I don't know if it's there. The Packers they've really like handicapped themselves super badly with the way they did Aaron Rodgers' extension. Like Aaron Rodgers literally fleeced the franchise pretty bad and basically gave himself a no trade clause without even having a no trade clause. That's how he worked that. Like that contract is nasty. But yes, Alan Lazard fits for him. I'd say the Bears just because they need weapons, right? Stay in division. You get to go back to Lambeau. You get to play the Packers. Get to work with Justin Fields, a young quarterback. Ravens as well. That's assuming Lamar Jackson comes back. That's assuming really any quarterback is there. They're going to need wide receivers. They've never really invested in the wide receiver room. They tried it in the draft with Rashad Bateman. They tried it with Hollywood Brown. It worked for a little bit, but they haven't really found that consistency in the wide receiver room. I like the Saints as well, who will probably move off of Michael Thomas. They're going to need another wide receiver, right? I mean, you can't. They have Chris Olave, very good year as a rookie. You're going to want another guy alongside him. Giants as well. They just need wide receivers when you have the worst wide receiver room. And then I have the Titans as well because they cut Robert Woods. They only have Traylon Burks out there. They're going to need another receiver to run routes too, right? You're going to have to be able to free up somebody and you're going to have to put the money somewhere. And if you're going to keep Ryan Tannehill, you got to have a supporting cast around that guy because he's not really going to elevate guys. You got to have guys that can kind of do their part to elevate the offense there.
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it. I think he's probably the best receiver in that class. The three teams that really need offensive weapons that I all have down, you mentioned all three. So being the Tennessee Titans, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Chicago Bears. I think all three need receivers. He'd be a fantastic addition to all of them. Assuming Lamar's back for Baltimore, and then Tennessee. To me, Tennessee is like the best fit. Or maybe Chicago because you get to play Green Bay twice a year. That's really it depends on how Lazard feels about that. But outside of that, Tennessee, because they have a chance to not rebuild and just go for it in that terrible division again. Why not, right? And they need someone opposite of Traylon Burks, and if they, that kind of goes along with the Mike Gesicki to Tennessee as well. Once again, we'll see what happens, but like they just need weapons. They need to help out Ryan Tannehill offensively. They were crazy to let go of AJ Brown, and now they really show. So like Alan Lazard, my favorite spot for him would be Tennessee, followed by Chicago, and then Baltimore being third.
Yeah, he's one of those guys can slide in, give you production right away and really help the room. This will lead me into public enemy number one in Philadelphia, Juju
Mm-hmm.
Smith-Schuster. He's obviously only signed a 1 year deal in Kansas City. I mean, it was a weird year. He won a Super Bowl. I don't really know. Didn't do anything amazing, right? I mean, he was productive when he was there, missed some time, is there. So I do have the Chiefs, right? He could run it back with the Chiefs, right? They could figure out a way to get a longer term deal. I don't think he would sign another 1 year there, but kind of give him some years and some dollars. Nothing too crazy, but bring him back to Kansas City. He meshed well with Mahomes and them guys. Another team, Ravens. He was linked to him even before joining the Chiefs, right? To team up. This would be mainly if Lamar stays, because I don't think he would even consider them if Lamar's not there. But if Lamar sticks around, the Ravens could be a fit. They need wide receivers big time. Giants as well, big market. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's a smart dude, right? Get himself in that New York market, do some TikTok dances in Times Square. That's a fit as well, and he can probably get the most dollars there. I think the dollars, the Giants would be willing to give you a little bit more dollars just because the need for a wide receiver would be there, and probably opportunity on the field similar to like his Steelers days where he would get reps, targets, catches compared to what he's going to get around these other rosters.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think the Giants one is pretty interesting. But far as like Juju's actual production, I feel like he needs to go somewhere where there's like an established number one or number one guy. Cause like Juju's shown he's played his best football when there's another target on the field that is a higher priority than Juju. It just takes away. And as a number two or number three, Juju's pretty damn efficient. And with that being said, the one other team I would add that you didn't say was the Carolina Panthers because they need another receiver and they already have DJ Moore. He'll get most of the attention defensively, which opens up Juju, which once again, I just think is so important for Smith Schuster because he's shown that he's a really good 2 or 3 receiver. You don't want him as your number one guy, which is why I don't think New York would be as productive for him personally. Money wise, it probably makes more sense, but like I think Carolina would be a pretty good fit next to DJ Moore.
Yeah, I didn't realize he had 78 catches, 800 something yards. I mean, just no touchdowns there. But yeah, that does make sense, is right. You don't want to trot out there with Juju Smith-Schuster as your number one guy. We kind of saw that production take a hit in Pittsburgh when AB was out of there. You kind of saw the real colors of Juju. Last guy on my list, DJ Chark. Weird year, only 30 catches, 500 yards. Some down the stretch though, he did have a 5-catch game for 100 yards against Carolina down the stretch, and then against the Vikings he had 7 catches, 94 yards. So he's a weird. He's a fast, tall, lanky receiver. He's only 26. He'll be on the market. He could go back to the Lions. I like the Ravens as well for him, kind of to have a big wide receiver out there that can move. The Bears, and the Giants as well. I mean, you could throw the Panthers into the mix, the Titans, right? Teams like that as well. But it's kind of the same teams out here that are going to need wide receivers and need weapons and be willing to go out and make plays for the weapons. Bears have a ton of money. That can make sense if he wants to get dollars and cents. Ravens, if you're trying to win and Lamar's there, probably makes a lot of sense as well. But I even think he could take off if he stays healthy. He could take off in New York. He kind of has all the physical intangibles and everything. He's still a young guy. It's all, can he stay healthy? I liked him when he was in Jacksonville, but we kind of haven't seen it since he moved there and only caught 30 balls this year. Where do you see the good fits for DJ Chark though hitting the market?
Yeah, all those teams make sense. All the wide receiver needy teams. The team that I will say that hasn't been mentioned, which would be kind of interesting, it'd be within division, would be the Minnesota Vikings. Adam Thielen's in his 30s. Minnesota's on record that they want to try and keep Thielen. But like, even if you keep Thielen, I think there's plenty of room for Shark, at least offensively. We'll see what the numbers are financially, obviously. But like they could use a number 2 receiver, a little more reliable than Thielen. Thielen has had a great career, honestly, but he's just getting up there in age and he's older. You got Justin Jefferson, you're throwing the ball like crazy. You got TJ Hawkinson, Dalvin Cook. I think adding another receiver across DJ Shark, I think could even open up that offense even more. And I like the idea of Minnesota. And then you play Detroit twice a year. I don't know if those things really matter to him, but it's just, in division, I could see him being in Minnesota being pretty damn productive. And then the last name I just want to throw out there, just like if the Saints cut Michael Thomas, as he's had such horrendous injury history and he can't stay on the field, a 1-year flyer to go to the Kansas City Chiefs, play with Patrick Mahomes. Kansas City doesn't need him week in and week out. If he could just pop in for the end of the year, the postseason, red zone, because he's still a huge, big body. He's still extremely talented. I think Michael Thomas would be a fantastic Kansas City Chief.
Yeah, I did not factor in the Michael Thomas cut, which could come. But yeah, I mean, any of those Super Bowl level teams, right? Chiefs, Bills, anybody that needs
Yeah.
a guy dirt cheap that can run a couple slants for you, which he's shown time over time he can do that. Not a bad fit. It'll be weird to see what they do. The Saints definitely have to move some money around, and I think, yeah, he's a likely candidate to be a dude that's moved. Moving on, we grouped the offensive line together just so we don't spend hours and hours just going at it with offensive line. But starting right off the top, the tackles, I mean, that's really the focal point. Orlando Brown, they weren't able to get a long-term deal done the last offseason in Kansas City. Probably a likely franchise candidate in Kansas City. I don't think they'll let him go. They literally just won a Super Bowl with him, so I doubt they let him go out of the building. But if he does get out of the building, the Chicago Bears, they got to get an O-line in front of Justin Fields. They have the most money. They would be able to just give him whatever he wants to protect Justin Fields' blind side on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays, right? And just call it a good day. So I think that would be a logical. I thought about Houston, but then I was like, they already have Tunsil playing left tackle. tackle down there. He literally left Baltimore because he didn't want to play right tackle and he wanted to play left tackle. So I didn't even mention, didn't really write down Houston, but Houston could be. I don't know if they just wanted to give him the bag and convince him to play right tackle. You'd have probably one of the best tackle duos in the league at that point if you got him. But Chiefs franchise tag or Bears if the Chiefs let him go out of the building, I think is the logical ones for me.
Yeah, I have both of those written down. I think those are the top options. If you're Chicago, like this is where you spend your money. Like Orlando Brown, you got to protect Justin Fields. Like that makes so much sense to me if you're Chicago, way more than spending on a running back that we talked earlier or a different position. Like if I'm Chicago, I offer him a really big contract, see if I can lure him away. And then the other team I have that wasn't mentioned was the New York Jets. They could use the help. I don't know if they'd be able to offer him the same kind of contract. And if you're going to stay in the AFC, you might as well just, ride that Super Bowl winner with Patrick Mahomes, right? But the New York Jets would be an interesting team as well. And like they shown that they have a phenomenal defense and a pretty good offense if they can get that quarterback position right. So like the Jets are really interesting next year. You add Orlando Brown, I think it would add quite a bit. But once again, I think the odds are is Orlando Brown's a Chief next year anyway.
Facts, yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the New York Jets because moving into Taylor Lewan at the bottom of the screen, um, I think I have him as the Jets one of his fits just because it'll be a cheaper option. It's probably only a 1 year, right? You don't have to go absolutely crazy to bring Taylor Lewan to town. So I mean, the money that it would cost for Orlando Brown would be substantial. So I had the Jets down there for Taylor Lewan. Also, the Bengals they could likely cut La'el Collins. I think the way his contract structured, they could get out of it. Obviously, he suffered an injury the knee injury and their O line became an issue at the stretch of last year, right? Arguably cost them a trip to the Super Bowl the way it folded up in Kansas City. So I like the Bengals there as him, Seahawks as well. They're gonna end up getting something done with Geno. You want to build up some protection around Geno, and then Bears as well. The Bears will probably be down here for damn near all these O linemen just because of how bad their offensive line is, and they have $100 million, and it's about time you put an offensive line that's actually respectable for Justin Fields to really see how Justin Fields is. So Taylor Lewan, if he wanted to kind of take that and be that guy for Justin Fields, I could see that. But yeah, Bengals, Seahawks, Jets, Bears is what I have as solid fits for Lewan, who was just cut by the Titans.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I have all those teams down, and the other two, I have two more teams that I wrote down was the New England Patriots and the Houston Texans. Um, Houston feels like a hard sell because like he was a Titan for a long time, and they're just rebuilding. And I don't think it's the smartest move for Houston to off just because he's coming off injury. But that is an interesting one to me. So is New England. He's got a ton of respect for Bill Belichick. You get in that system. Obviously, New England's got question marks. They're kind of a middle of the road team, but I could see him fitting in really well there. But I want to emphasize the Bengals. The Bengals was the big one to me. I think that makes a lot of sense. You're going to a contender, and it could be a short deal, short contract. It makes sense for both sides. Like I could see Taylor Lewan really being a Cincinnati Bengal.
Exactly, for sure. They kind of have some dollars. The Bengals have upwards of like 45 million. They'll probably cut Joe Mixon, so their number will look pretty right. And it's like let's go for it this year before we got to really dive in, get Burrow done. Burrow will probably get done, but then next year's gonna be Chase, Higgins. So
Mm-hmm.
you really have kind of this one last really great window to push for it before you become cap strapped. Next guy, Mike McGlinchey, 49ers right tackle. I think he leaves the Bay. And honestly, I only have one team down for him, and it's the Chicago Bears. He went to school at Notre Dame. He's got that the Windy City ties already. Notre Dame's fairly close to Chicago. They played some games at Soldier Field, and yeah, I think he could take his talents back to the cold weather, back to the roots where he played damn near close to a college ball at, and be a solid right tackle addition for the Bears. The Niners could bring him back as well, right? The Niners are a weird team where they don't pay a quarterback. They literally have Trey Lance and they have Brock Purdy. So I guess they're never gonna have to pay a quarterback. Jimmy G's out of the building. So I mean, obviously they'll eventually have to re-sign Nick Bosa and get some defensive guys deals done. But when you're not paying a quarterback, you have the flexibility to kind of keep every piece around him. And so he could go back to the Niners as well. But I think the Bears, since he played at Notre Dame, it's like you tie him right back into that area.
Yeah, Bears is the big one. That's once again the smart way for Chicago to spend their money. Feels much more attainable than Orlando Brown. If I'm the Bears, I would offer him a really big contract. And outside of Chicago or the Niners, I have the Patriots and the Titans now. I think the Patriots need to sign somebody to just get some help. And then Tennessee is interesting as well. But with all the caveats of Tennessee, it's like I just need to know if they're going to try and retool or like rebuild because there's big differences. It just depends how they feel. If I think they're more of retool and bring back Tannehill, but it just kind of seems like they're spinning their tires, right? They're kind of stuck in purgatory, being good and not great. So Tennessee's interesting, but honestly, Chicago. Like they need to offer him a big contract, in my opinion. Just got to shore up that offensive line. You know, you got a good quarterback for once in Chicago history. Like protect that man. So to me, if you're the Bears or if you're McGlinchey, it's like the Bears are going to offer the most money for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't even mention the Patriots. Isaiah Wynn should be out of their building, so they should be in play for a tackle as well, right? They're going to need something, right? Something to protect Mac Jones, unless Belichick's just going to completely say screw it again. And they should have more money freed up as well, because I think they're going to cut Jonnu Smith, who was a complete bust since they
Mm-hmm.
brought him in that two tight end thing. I think we talked about that like one of our first things about the whole two tight end scheme, and like this is going to be a good scheme, and it never panned out. But yeah, so they'll have money. They're definitely going to need a tackle with Isaiah Wynn probably gone. Next guy, Nate Davis, guard for the Titans. Can't lie, I haven't watched a lot of Titans ball, but he's 26 years old. I've read that he's one of the best guards in the league. Obviously, Derrick Henry's production pretty solid, right? And he's running in front of he's running with Nate Davis blocking for him in front of him. So teams for him, the Bears, they can go get a guard. I like Rams as well. I think the Rams are really going to spend an offseason retooling their O-line and retooling their offense. They convinced Sean McVay to come back. It's likely they're going to move off Jalen Ramsey. So I think they're going to swing some money around some restructures and find a way to fortify that O-line back up, get Matt Stafford back healthy, right? So he's a fit there. And then the Cardinals as well. They're going to need some O-line as well. Jonathan Gannon, new coach. They probably have a little tighter. I think they have like 13 million to spend as of right now, but they could use a guard as well, a young guard, and a guy that plays at that level is always needed. That's if the Titans don't bring him back. I don't see. I don't know. I mean, if you're the Titans, why are you not bringing this guy back? When I see this guy on a free agent list, I'm like, why isn't this guy already be re-signed if he's 26 and he's at this level? So the Titans could very well bring him back as well.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Those are all the only other team I have listed is also the Denver Broncos because they need to shore up that offensive line, get a guard. You know, Sean Payton in there, like we said, they're going to want to add some running backs. They're going to change everything up and trying to get Russell to be back to cooking and some magic with Sean Payton. I think a huge factor in that equation is getting the offensive line shored up. So I think Nate Davis would be a really good addition. But like once again, I feel like he's going to be a Titan because like if he's here and he's young, right? Like why would you not re-sign him, especially if they're not going full rebuild mode? Like to me, he'll be a Titan. But the big ones outside of that was Arizona, which you mentioned, and then the Denver Broncos for me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't just let everybody go out of the building. And if you're doubling down on Ryan Tannehill, like bring your O line back for sure. Last guy on the list though, Isaac Sayamalu, Eagle. He's probably out, similar to Big V or Halapatuti Vaitai when he went to Detroit after the Super Bowl year in 2017. So teams for him, I like the Rams as well. They run a very similar zone run scheme. Sean McVay runs that very similar scheme, so he fits and plugs right in there. They'll free up money, find a way to do it. Cardinals as well. Jonathan Gannon, right, has the Philly ties and would just seamlessly. He's worked with them. He's been in the building with them. Would be a good fit there. Bears, and then I will throw in the Broncos as well because I didn't even mock them down, but they do need O-line help. They need something to put in front of Russell Wilson to shore that up, especially with Sean Payton. So you could throw the Broncos down there as well. But I think Rams, Cardinals, honestly, are probably the two most likely, I would say, for me at least.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Rams, Cardinals, Broncos. I also had the Indianapolis Colts down, kind of shore up the guard position there. I think that would be a good addition, especially if they're going to get a young quarterback in the draft. If they end up trading up, like you gotta protect them, right? That's going to be the number one priority. But I think the Rams make the most sense, followed by the Cardinals because of the Gannon ties. But like the Rams to me feels like the one that makes the most sense for them.
Yeah, it's a scheme fit. It's such a perfect scheme fit it feels. Moving on out of offense, we're on to the defensive end, a game or honestly defensive line literally controls the games on Sunday. Marcus Davenport from the Saints. We've seen the Saints have done some catastrophic stuff contract wise to where they have no money, so they can't bring back productive young guys on Yeah, on their free agency list. So Marcus Davenport's probably gone, hitting the market. Teams for him, I have the Broncos down, give him another pass rush. Bears as well, just because they have so much money and they love to spend money on defense. So, I mean, why wouldn't you go out and get a guy like Marcus Davenport if you're not going to invest it into Justin Fields' side of the ball? I guess you want to build the best defense you can build. And then a weird one that I don't even know if the money would ever even add up, but the Chiefs, if they decide to move on from Frank Clark, right, find a way. They're so savvy. I mean, we thought they had no money and they brought in Joe Thuney, and then they found a way to bring in Orlando Brown. So it's like right when you think these teams are out of money, Patrick Mahomes' contract is structured so well that yeah, if they moved off Frank Clark, he could slide right in there and be right there for the Chiefs, right, and just add them another weapon on defense, straight younger than Frank Clark and ready to go. And that team just they retool, right? They find a way. But those are the three fits I would say that I have written down.
Yeah, I like those. I have the Chiefs down. That clearly makes the most sense, right? You go to a contender, you retool that defensive line. Money is an interesting one. The other one I have, which I think money would also be a factor, would be the Baltimore Ravens. Like they're known as a franchise for the defense. I think Marcus Davenport would fit in perfectly with Baltimore. I think him as a Raven or a Chief would be fantastic. Then the one that makes the most sense for Marcus Davenport to me because of money and finance is the Chicago Bears. They can offer the most money. They need to retool all around, right? And they have an opportunity. We're assuming Aaron's going to be traded. Who knows if Jordan Love's that good? Detroit was a middle of the road. Minnesota. It's just, yeah, they're the Bears are towards the bottom of that division still, but it feels wide open. Like it doesn't feel like it's going to take much to like be right in that conversation for division. And like adding someone like Marcus Davenport to get to the quarterback would be a huge step to me. Like we keep talking about how they need to sign all these offensive linemen. They need to shore up their defensive line too, right? It's all about the trenches, and I think Marcus Davenport would be a great Chicago Bear.
Yep, yep. Moving on, Zach Allen, defensive end. He can play inside, he can play outside for the Arizona Cardinals, which is another weird one. He's only 25, and I'm like, why isn't this team like, why aren't these teams just bringing these guys back or getting deals done? He had 5.5 sacks this year, so he had his most productive year. Teams that I have going back to the Cardinals, I think that's very, very logical when you look at you bringing a defensive head coach and Jonathan Gannon. Does he want to take away from his defense off the rip? Probably not. So that seems likely. And then other team I have written down is the Seattle Seahawks, who could use some help on the pass rush, and they could also use some help inside. You can slide this guy inside at 6'4", 281. He can play a little bit of D tackle for a couple snaps and help you on the inside and help you on the pass rush. And you get to play in division, right? You get to stay out there on the West Coast and just go up. Play with Pete Carroll, good defensive guy. So I think Cardinals, most likely Seahawks would be a another solid fit for Zach Allen. But once again, 25, it's like I don't get how these teams just like let these guys hit the open market. I don't know. Maybe I'm fortunate that our team operates correctly, but yeah, where do you see Zach Allen landed?
Yeah, you nailed that one. The two teams I have are Arizona returning, and then in divisions, the Seattle Seahawks as well. For all the reasons you stated, I think it just makes a lot of sense. Zach Allen's not a guy that's going to be an absolute superstar and give you double-digit sacks, but he's a guy that's going to be consistent, very good, get you 6 to 8 sacks in the season or 5 to 8. And like for his age, it doesn't make a lot of sense to let him leave the building, right? I think he's going to be a Arizona Cardinal. I just don't know why you would hesitate on it. Obviously, if the money's crazy, what he's asking for, you hesitate. But like, I got to imagine you can make a good, efficient deal with him. Like, that's a guy you don't want leaving the building.
Exactly, exactly. Another dude before I touch on kind of some veterans, Jadeveon Clowney, he's been up and down, right? Super hyped when he was coming out of South Carolina. Obviously spent some time with Houston. He's never really lived up to that number one pick hype. He's back on the market. The falling out thing with the Browns is fascinating. I think he apologized and the team said they kind of cut ties. But Jadeveon Clowney, I think Bears, right? If they don't get Marcus Davenport, you can give less years. You can give like 2 years to Jadeveon Clowney and like throw him in there. I don't know how great of a fit it will be because he has health, right? His health issues definitely uh, concern me how available he'll be on the field. Another team I like for Clowney, Ravens. They always invest in the defense, right? He's kind of a veteran guy. I imagine he would love to go after Deshaun Watson a little bit too. That's one dude I think that it might matter a little bit if the Ravens came calling. He would want to go chase after the Browns. Like I really, true. He seems like that type of guy. So Ravens in there. And then other one, Cardinals, right? If they somehow let Zach Allen go, you can slide the Cardinals in out there. He can fill that pass rush void that you're going to lose with Zach Allen. You just lost J.J. Watt as well to to retirement. So if you let Zach Allen go, you're really going to need some pass rush. And Jonathan Gannon can go out and say, get me Jadeveon Clowney. When he's on the field, I know he could be productive. So, I mean, those are probably the three fits. But I like the Ravens one, to be honest. I want to see him chasing after the Browns. The way the falling out happened with the Browns, it's like that'd be electric to see him going after the Browns on Sundays.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I have the same exact three teams: Bears, Ravens, Cardinals. It just makes a lot of sense. I think Arizona could even bring him in if it makes sense, the right deal, and keep Zach Allen. Like that wouldn't surprise me that much, to be honest. But like I like him as a Raven. Obviously, the Bears they need all the help they can get. But like Clowney's a little bit older. I wouldn't want to give him as much of like a bigger contract. Like I can get Marcus Davenport. Like I don't want Clowney. So to me, the Ravens make the most sense. You can go after the Browns, and I 100% agree with you. He seems like the type of guy that like, oh, I get to play Cleveland twice a year. Like they piss me off. They had the falling out, whatever happened. Like to me, Jadeveon Clowney totally seems like the type of dude that would take less money to do that. And assuming they get it right with Lamar Jackson, Baltimore's gonna be right there in that division. So like Jadeveon Clowney being a Raven makes a ton of sense to me.
Yep, yep, yep. Uh, Another guy, Brandon Graham, bottom of the screen, Philadelphia Eagle, came back last year. I mean, maybe he'll come back this year. He didn't seem very like, I don't know. It was like super non-committal. It's like he could come back to Philly, couldn't come back to Philly. Um, but so yeah, I have the Eagles down on a list. Obviously, a return and playing another year or two in Philly and then retiring. That'd probably be like the optimal thing for both sides, right? For the optics. But if we say screw it and yeah, Brandon Graham, maybe he wants maybe he wants too much money, right? Maybe he thinks he can still be that, give you some production and we're not going to give him the money worth that. I look at the Bills as well as a fit, another Super Bowl level team, right? Some pass rush. And then the Chiefs, right? The Andy Reid ties, right? Go out there, play in Kansas City. Maybe they go a cheaper option, right? Say they don't, or Davenport goes somewhere else and they want to get a guy that can come in and be your third down pass rusher. You want to go a little bit cheaper, lose Frank Clark. You can bring in Brandon Graham. Knows Andy Reid. Obviously, we saw at the Super Bowl, a ton of respect there. So I think that those three teams are the most likely, right? Keep that. He's going to want to play for a Super Bowl contender. He's got a couple years left, right? So those three teams are the most likely, I'd say.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I have those three teams down as well. And additionally, the Cincinnati Bengals. And they're all for the same reasons, right? Like contenders, you get him on a cheaper deal. He's more for depth. He's going to play third downs. He's not going to play a ton of snaps, as he didn't play a ton of snaps this year for us. So, like, to me, that makes the most sense. I obviously hope he's going to be an Eagle because I'd hate to see him in a different jersey. But that being said, I know we're not there yet, but I'm just going to lump in the other guy that's in the photo with him, like Fletcher Cox, because to me, it's a similar situation. If he's not an Eagle, the other teams, it's like maybe the Chiefs or the Bills, like just something cheap to put him in as just, depth and not going to play as many snaps and just get to the quarterback when it matters most. I got just an Eagles question for you. If like we could only keep one of these vets, like which one would you take?
Fletcher Cox.
Yeah, in a heartbeat, right? It's got to be Fletcher. It wasn't even close for me. I agree. It's got to be
Yeah.
Fletcher Cox. But those guys are in the same situation to me. I'd love to just bring back both if the money makes sense, but they're still good. They can still contribute, and they got to be on contenders just at this point in their career.
Yeah, last guy, Yannick Ngakoue. I didn't really search up too many rumors, things about him. He played with the Colts. He's bounced around a little bit, obviously starting in Jacksonville, went to the Raiders, went to the Colts. The Bengals make sense for him, right? Cheaper option, add some pass rush. Cardinals can make sense as well, right? He's been out there on the West Coast playing with the Raiders. So if they wanted to go cheap as well, you lose Zach Allen, or even you keep Zach Allen. You want to go a little bit cheap, add another pass rusher in that Jonathan Gannon fold. Uh, that could work out. Honestly, I didn't even write down teams for this guy, but the Eagles could make sense too if he wants to come in cheap, right? The Chiefs, any team that kind of has, if he wants to start competing for a title, and right, he had 9.5 sacks this year, solid year. He'll bring, what he's going to bring to the table. It's just, what are the dollars going to look like? So I think those teams make a lot of sense for Yannick Ngakoue.
Yeah, you nailed it. Another veteran that's just going to come in, wants to play for contender. The one team I had highlighted above the others was the Cincinnati Bengals. To me, it makes the most sense for him. But honestly, any of those contenders, whoever can get the money right for him, because I feel like he's not going to really listen to teams that are rebuilding or that are not truly in contention. It just at this point in his career it doesn't make sense.
Nope. He spent literally, yeah, he spent years in Vegas and with the Colts this year. Yeah, he probably wants to play with a decent organization, for sure. Moving on, defensive tackles. You kind of already touched on Fletcher Cox, so I'll jump on Fletcher Cox. It's literally Eagles or Chiefs, right? I mean, I
Yep.
thought he was going to be potentially gone last year, but he obviously read up. So I think Howie finds a way to get it done and he stays. But if he doesn't, Chiefs, Andy Reid, those ties. He was another guy at the Super Bowl, giving Andy a hug, right? They kind of have that there, and he fills in and plugs next to Chris Jones pretty nicely, right? Doesn't have to be amazing. Chris Jones is kind of that guy on that line, and he can just do his thing, fill his spot, and work out just fine in Kansas City. Um,
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't have much to add. Like it just nothing makes sense to me outside of Philadelphia or Kansas City at all.
For bigger one, Javon Hargrave was very productive on our line this year as I pull up his numbers. But the number one fit, it's literally been going around the league. It sounds like the Bears are super in on him. Like that's all I've heard is Bears, Bears, Bears. You go to mostly any website, yeah, you do any research, he's linked heavily to the Bears. So I think that's number one. I wrote down Seahawks as well, similar thing to Zach Allen, right? But he's more primary. He's going to be on your inside, right? So he'll shore up that inside stuff the run. He gets to the quarterback. He had 11 sacks this year, but I mean, it's how much with the guys around him really helped on that Eagles O line. And then another one outside the box, the Browns. They need help on the inside, stopping the run. Right, their interior D line was pretty damn bad. So I mean, he could come in and shore up there. But I think it's really he's 30 years old. Like I think it's gonna be a money thing for Hargrave. I think he wants to get his money, and I think the Bears are gonna pony up and add to their defense.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Chicago makes the most sense. He's not going to return. He's not going to be an Eagle. He's going to go make his money. He's 30 years old. You're in the NFL. Like, you go get your money. You're at the end. I don't blame him at all. The three teams I had down: Seahawks, Cardinals, and then Falcons. Um, it's just whoever's going to pay him. To me, it'll be the Bears. But outside of that, like Arizona makes a lot of sense. Seattle needs that help, and so does Atlanta. If you're Hargrave, you probably don't want to do Atlanta just because of the state that franchise and team is in right now. But to me, that would also make some sense. If the Bears are on the table, I think Atlanta can be on the table. With that being said, though, Chicago is probably the one that's going to offer the most money. So, like, if I'm Hargrave, I just follow the money. Like, you had your Super Bowl run, came up a little short this year, but like at this point in his career, to me, like you got to just take the fat contract.
Exactly, exactly. I didn't even mention the Cardinals either, but that does make sense just because of the Jonathan Gannon thing. Stay with him, right? Go play in his defense once again. Last guy on the list as far as interior, Dalvin Tomlinson, 29, Vikings defensive tackle, two teams. If he wants to stay in division, he can go to the Bears. That's assuming that the Bears whiff on Hargrave, right? Hargrave goes somewhere else for sure, then they could pivot to him. And then I have the Browns as well, basically for the same reason I have Javon Hargrave. They need somebody on the inside to kind of help stuff the run. They already have Myles Garrett to rush the passer, so I think that defense in Cleveland definitely needs a run stopper in the middle to fortify that defense.
Ooh, I like that. I didn't think about Cleveland at all, but like outside of Myles Garrett, that's like they're not exactly great on that D line. That would make a ton of sense to me. I like that Cleveland signing quite a bit. Obviously, Cleveland could be real lethal. We'll see what they do with Deshaun Watson. But yeah, I have Bears and then returning to the Vikings. I don't think that'll happen. So like Bears is the big one to me, depending on how the Hargrave situation goes. But I like that Cleveland idea quite a bit. I think that'd be a pretty damn good fit.
Yeah, he could always, yeah, he could definitely return to the Vikings. All these guys, right? The Vikings are in a weird cap spot too, where they would have to like extend Kirk Cousins more years to push the money farther down because I think they're at like negative 30 million in cap space right now because of Kirk's deal. But I mean, there's enough cap maneuvering in this league to where they could get the job done. Moving on, inside linebacker. I cut out the outside linebacker portion just because it's guys like Justin Houston, Anthony Barr. It's the who's who's of NFL guys, right? Like, I mean, they're basically pass rushers, basically DNs. They'll get snagged up by contenders and keep it moving. The only interesting one is Samson Ekubam, but he's pretty much similar. He played with the Niners last year. Productive guy. So moving on, inside linebackers. First guy, Bobby Wagner, obviously got released. Only played the 1 year. The weird like contract where people freaked out when it was like a 5 year, $70 million deal, but it was really just a 1 year deal with the way the structure of it was. Teams I have for him, Seahawks. He could go there, right? Reunion with Pete Carroll. That team was on the up and up. That defense actually looked good, at least secondary wise last year. So go play for them, right? Play a couple more years and then call it quits. Eagles as well. I have. We'll probably lose T.J. Edwards, who I'll talk about, right? He could be a cheaper option, a 1 year option, stopgap guy. Um, to come play for us. And then I have the Giants as well. The Giants need linebacker help. They had Jalen Smith playing linebacker last year, so they could use some help at middle linebacker. Bobby Wagner, go to the Big Apple, right? It's a big market. He just played in LA, and he'll be able to get reps, right? At snaps. So, I mean, I imagine if you're sticking around and playing football after all those years, right, he's going to want some snaps. So I think the Seahawks reunion, Eagles or Giants makes a lot of sense for Bobby Wagner.
I didn't think about the New York Giants. That would be an interesting one. I mean, they're on the come up as well, and you could probably make a ton of money outside of football being in New York. That's really interesting. I have Seattle down. I have the Eagles down. I would love for him to be an Eagle, obviously, pretty biased there, but I think he fits. And then the other team I have down that you didn't mention was the Cincinnati Bengals. Money has to be right. That's probably would be a tough part of the equation, but I think Bobby Wagner with the Bengals would be a phenomenal addition for that defense. I don't know if it's the most realistic, but like I like the Cincinnati landing spot a lot.
I mean, it could work. I don't see why it couldn't. I never, yeah, as I said, we kind of cut out the cap portion of it just because teams are that good at manipulating. But yeah, I mean, we'll talk about Jermaine Pratt, but if he slides out, right, that slides
Mm-hmm.
in. You could slide in Bobby Wagner right away. Veterans, been there, knows what to do. And then Joe Burrow can lure guys, right? So I mean, you get Joe Burrow gets you on the phone and says, "Hey, come to Cincy and come play." It could definitely convince guys. I would say for sure. Moving on, we already brought up TJ Edwards, so might as well. Eagles guy, he's probably out, right? He's going to get money somewhere. He's only 26, great year. He had 99 tackles, 2 sacks. Um, did his thing. Well, it's 159 total, 99 solo. Teams for him, I have the Giants, stay in division. They need linebacking core. Falcons as well. They're going to need a linebacker. They had Deion Jones, sent him to Cleveland, I believe it was mid-year. So they have a hole at linebacker. They're a rebuilding team, kind of. They're in like a weird spot where it's third-year Arthur Smith. We don't know what's going on there, but he's a young guy to add to that defense. And then I like the Steelers as well, right? He kind of stay in Pennsylvania, stay, go play for Mike Tomlin. Cold weather, you kind of you've been there, you've done that. He played at Wisconsin, so he kind of has that cold weather vibes. And the Steelers are probably losing Devin Bush anyway because they didn't do they didn't extend his fifth-year option, so he's probably on the way out. So why not slide in T.J. Edwards into that linebacker spot? He's seen productivity. It looks like a good fit, I'd say.
Yeah, I like those. I didn't think about the Atlanta Falcons. That could be a pretty good one. He could get good money there. And once again, Atlanta has a chance to take over this division because I don't think it'll be Tampa Bay or New Orleans because of their cap space. To me, it's Atlanta or Carolina. Obviously, depends what they do since they have big quarterback questions. But like, assuming they do some things right, like Atlanta would be a pretty good fit for TJ Edwards. I like that. And then the other two I had were Giants and Steelers, like you mentioned. New York, you get to play Philly twice. They're on the come up. That makes a lot of sense. And then so does the Steelers. Just you go to the AFC, but you stay in your state, so you're not going too far. Like they just make a lot of sense football wise. But I never thought about the Falcons. I kind of like that fit quite a bit, honestly.
Exactly. Yeah. It'd be an interesting one. You kind of got to have patience there, but he would get money, right? I mean, that's the plus, right? If
Exactly.
you're going to go to Atlanta, you're going to get a nicer payday than you would with the Giants or the Steelers. Moving on, Levante David, another NFC South linebacker. I don't know what to make of him because he's already won a championship, right? So he's kind of done that. So it's like I could see him just chilling out. I mean, it sounds like the Buccaneers they're gonna want to stay competitive at the same. They're gonna want to like compete and not completely rebuild. They're going to try and retool rather than just say screw it and rebuild. I don't know what Kyle Trask brings to the table at quarterback. I don't know if they'll go out in a week or so and try to find a quarterback. They're kind of cap strapped as well. So I like the Bucks. He could go back to the Bucks, right, and play a last year and just kind of call it, play with Todd Bowles for one more and call it. Bills as well, if he's trying to, be in that Super Bowl conversation and kind of still be uh, with a team that's going to compete. You go to Buffalo, and then I like Raiders as well. They need a linebacker. They'll probably give you a little bit more money. They'll probably give you another year or two on the contract, right? A little bit more financial security. I don't know if that matters to Levante David at this point at 33 years old, but those three, he's kind of a tough guy to predict because I don't know, if he wants to. He's played with Tom Brady for the past couple of years. Does he want to keep competing? Does he want to get some dollars? Does he just want to stay where he is? Those are all things that I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of news out of Levante David, so those are kind of the three teams that I mocked up to where he could go.
Yeah, where Levante David goes is going to be really interesting because he could flip a defense really fast. He's damn good. And like, I have the New York Giants down as one of the destinations. You go to New York, you get that money, you're in that market, team on the up, right? They had a much better season last year. We'll see if they build on it. The other big one I have is the Bills. The other guy we have pictures, which we'll talk about shortly, Tremaine Edmonds. I don't think he's returning to Buffalo. So then you'll have that need. I think you plug in Levante David. That's a fantastic fit in Buffalo. And then the other one is the Las Vegas Raiders as well. I also think there's a scenario, I kind of brought it up earlier, that the Raiders kind of go all in, right? You figure out a way to get Aaron Rodgers, you give Josh Jacobs a contract, you sign Levante David, and you just kind of go for it. That there is a scenario where the Raiders feel like they're closer than they are far away, and they just go for it. If they do that, kind of like a Los Angeles Rams esque, and just try and get a bunch of free agents and just full on go for it. I think Levante David would be a phenomenal Raider. In the scenario where they don't do that, my favorite spot for him would be Buffalo. I think you plug him in Buffalo. Buffalo is just a few key pieces away, right? And Levante David is definitely one of them. So I like the Buffalo Bills a lot for him.
Yeah, plug him in the Sean McDermott scheme, and that sure, he's just a weird dude. Anybody that's played 11 years, like he's played through the depths of hell in Tampa
Mm-hmm.
Bay and stuck around, right? Never said I want out. To wait all the way till Tom Brady gets there, wins a ring. So it's like I don't know what Levante David wants to do. He's been around that long. Moving on, yeah, to Tremaine Edmonds. He's probably out of Buffalo. He's 25, young linebacker, right? Teams I like for him, I like the Bears if they want to keep going. They just shipped off Roquan Smith out to Baltimore last year, right? So they want to fill that void but not give him $100 million. There's that option on the table. Giants as well. Steelers on there. Steelers will need a linebacker. I believe his brother plays with Pittsburgh as well as a safety, right? So you got that family tie. They're going to lose Devin Bush, so you can slide in right there. And then Browns, I believe they're going to lose Anthony Walker, I believe was their linebacker. He missed like all of last year, so he could slide right in there. They're going to need a linebacker to fill in the void, coverage linebacker that can kind of do a little bit of everything. And Tremaine Edmonds could slot in there perfectly for any of those teams, I would say.
I like those. I actually have a few different ones for Tremaine Edmonds. I feel like the Denver Broncos is interesting, and the Washington Commanders plugging in there. I don't know if you want to go to Washington just because of how dysfunctional it is. And then the third team I have is the Houston Texans. Like once again, I actually believe in this rebuild. It's not the last 2 years where like you don't want to go to Houston. It's a cesspool. They're just going to lose. Like, yeah, they're going to lose a lot this year too. But I really believe they're going to try to build something heading into this season for real. And Tremaine Edmonds is right at that age where he wants a nice big contract. I don't think it's a terrible idea to Houston give him a pretty good contract and be like, we can him be one of our key pieces defensively as we rebuild. So like, I think he'd fit pretty well in Houston as well. Plus, no state income tax. I know that's a big factor for some of these guys, and Houston's one of the spots.
Yeah, productive athletic linebacker, and he's young. He's 24 now. He'll be 25 at the start of next year, so it's like that's prime. That add him into Houston. I never even mentioned Houston. You got a former linebacker as head coach, right? Coach him up, get him there. That's an elite piece for that defense. Last guy on there, Jermaine Pratt. Bengals linebacker. He could go back to the Bengals. I don't know if he will. Obviously, we saw the outburst at the end of last year as they were walking off the field after the hit by the young guy. I think it was Osai who hit Pat Mahomes. So I don't know if that'll kind of sever some ties. He could go back to the Bengals, Giants as well, and then stay in division. You can go to the Browns if you want to play your old buddies twice a year. You could go there for Jermaine Pratt.
Yeah, I like that. The one other team I have for Jermaine Pratt, which I think makes sense, is the Dallas Cowboys. You add him to that defense. You know what Dallas could not do to save their life was cover tight ends well. Jermaine Pratt would be fantastic for the tight end coverage for Dallas. And like, if the money makes sense, he doesn't return to Cincinnati. You know, Dallas is a real contender as well in the NFC. The NFC is way easier to get through than the AFC. Like, I think Jermaine Pratt would actually be a very good Dallas Cowboy.
For sure. He's kind of a do-it-all linebacker as well. Good in coverage, very good in coverage at that middle linebacker spot. Didn't even factor in the Cowboys just because the money's tight, and I don't know if they'll
Right.
actually be willing. I don't know what Jerry Jones will do. I don't think anybody knows what the Jones family will do. They'll probably sign more offensive guys and call it a day. But that is a good fit, honestly. I didn't even map that one down. Moving on, cornerback. First guy on the list, let's bring up our old buddy James Bradbury. Honestly, hell of a season for us. He had a resurgence, right, a career year, and kind of showed, hey, I'm an elite guy, all pro cornerback, obviously, regardless of the hold at the end of the Super Bowl. So teams I like for James Bradbury, I don't think he comes back to Philly. There's a possibility, but it'd be years, lower dollars. But I just don't see it. with Slay already getting up there in age. Cardinals, stay in that Jonathan Gannon defense, right? You're already familiar with the scheme. You know what scheme's going to be ran out there in the desert. If they lose Byron Murphy, who we'll talk about uh, in a bit, he could slide in right there for him. Raiders as well. They need secondary help. Their secondary sucks. Their defense sucks, to be honest. Uh, Outside of the pass rush, outside of Max Crosby, the defense, and Chandler Jones, who wasn't even that amazing. They need some defensive help. And then the Jags as well. I think the Jags are always like a corner away, right? And I think that I actually saw last night that they're going to end up cutting Shaquille Griffin. So he kind of enters the market. I didn't even have that mapped out. We won't even talk about that. But I mean, eventually, if it happens, he could slide in for the Jags. The kind of veteran corner, right? They have money to spend right now with Trevor Lawrence still in the rookie deal. So I think those three teams, Cardinals, I like a lot just because of the Jonathan Gannon fit. You don't have to go to another scheme.
Yeah, I didn't think about the Jonathan Gannon and Bradbury to Arizona. That makes a lot of sense to me. That didn't cross my mind at all. I didn't think about the Raiders. I like both of those spots. I do have the Jags down. I think the Jags are a fantastic destination. And then these next two teams I have down for most of these cornerbacks because they just need cornerback help so bad would be the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. I'm going to say that for a lot of these teams, especially Minnesota. Minnesota has to do something with their secondary defensively. They have to make changes. So I think Minnesota is going to be on the list for a lot of these teams. But if I'm Bradbury, like I didn't think about Arizona at all. Like I like the Arizona fit quite a bit, especially going to Jonathan Gannon. And if it's not Arizona, it's the Jags for me. I think the Jags make a lot of sense too.
Yep, for sure. Byron Murphy, might as well talk about the other corner in the desert. If he doesn't go back to the Cardinals, teams I like, you're pretty much spot on with the same teams I have. The Vikings, like they're gonna lose Pat P. They've kind of went the old. They've done like what the Colts do at quarterback. They've done that at cornerback, and they bring in these old dudes and kind of try to keep retooling and running with these old dudes. Why not go get a young guy, figure out how to make the money work? Vikings for Byron Murphy, and then Lions as well would make sense. They need help in that secondary for sure, right? That secondary is getting torched all last year. It was literally shootout football. You know, it was like Big 12 football when the Lions came on it sometimes.
I don't know how likely it is that Arizona just brings Murphy back. I didn't really look into that, but I think that's a good choice. And then you nailed it. My other two teams, which would be the running theme for cornerback, is like Vikings and Lions. I think he fits both of those really, really well. And if I were to emphasize one, it'd be just to return to Arizona because I think they could build something special.
Yep. Jamel Dean, solid number two corner out there for the Bucks. Obviously, the Bucks they're sitting on Tom Brady's. They're absorbing all of Tom Brady's cap hit this year, so it's like a $35 million dead hit that they're going to sit on this year. So you're going to see a lot of free agents skip town and be out of there. And Jamel Dean, Sean Murphy Bunting, and we'll talk about two of their younger corners. They did re-sign Carlton Davis last year, I believe, but Jamel Dean, young guy. Teams I have for him, the Lions, Raiders as well, who will need a young corner, and they're gonna have money. They're not paying a quarterback, and then Vikings as well. If the Vikings can make it happen, that's a solid ad for them on the back end of their secondary. Their secondary is so damn bad that it could help them for sure.
Yeah, I have those teams listed. Additional teams I put down the New York Giants. I think that could be a really good fit. New England Patriots, I could see Jamal Dean being pretty damn good in Bill Belichick's system. And then the one I personally like a lot, I don't know if it would actually be plausible, is the Cincinnati Bengals. You pair him, they're getting off Eli Apple. I don't think they're bringing back Eli Apple. For everything Eli Apple was, Cincinnati seemed to get the most out of that guy, honestly. And I think we've seen his ceiling, right? He's not like you could get it done with him, but like you can have a much better pairing. You put Jamel Dean with Awuzie outside. I think that would be a phenomenal fit. Like I love the idea of pairing him with Awuzie in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't even add that one or think about that one just because of I don't know how, tight their money will be if they go out and
Right.
get an offensive lineman or they go out and get a pass rusher. Are they going to want to go out and spend on a corner or will they just draft a corner? But that is an interesting one. Gives you a young guy to kind of be there for sure. Next guy, Marcus Peters. I don't think he has many suitors, right? Baltimore probably go back to Baltimore's most likely. He's only 30. He's kind of weird, like weird personality. But I have Ravens, and then the only other team I wrote down was the Steelers, which is like totally a shot in the dark. But go play for Mike Tomlin, right? Kind of a hard-nosed coach. I think he has to be with a coach that's like hard-nosed and like actually has a presence in the locker room. Like, I don't see him going with a young coach, and like his personality is like walk all over like the coaches and guys like Harbaugh, guys like Mike Tomlin. They kind of they set their foot forward and they run the locker room. So I think either of those two teams. Staying in Baltimore is probably most likely, but if you get to go in division, play for another historic franchise, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers, you can't beat that.
Wow, I like that a lot. I never even thought about Pittsburgh, and you'll get to play Baltimore twice. Marcus Petersby is a petty person too. You know he would love to play Baltimore twice if they get rid of him, like without a doubt. I like that idea a lot. That'd probably be my favorite spot. Outside of that, running with the theme of the franchise that likes to just go older corners and just go for it would be the Minnesota Vikings. I think Marcus Peters fits that perfectly as they did it with Patrick Peterson. Like he's not as young, but like just kind of go for it. Sign Marcus Peters, just shore up the secondary. I think Minnesota would be a suitor for him as well.
Facts. And I didn't even mention, honestly, like Eagles as well could slide in depending on how much money he wants, right? Bradbury slides out. Depending if we draft a corner, if he doesn't want a ton of dollars, he could slide in and kind of be that Bradbury, right? And he could sit there and say, "Oh snap, they just rebuilt James Bradbury's value up to where he's going to get a solid multi-year deal. I go there for 1 year, I could go do that." But that's kind of a shot in the dark. Like I don't think we're going to do that. Most likely draft a corner, but I mean that's an interesting one, kind of same age group as James Bradbury, and would fit the mold. Um, Next dude, Sean Murphy Bunting, last guy I have on the list. Younger corner as well. Tampa Bay Bucks, probably going to be one of the guys that gets purged off the roster. He's on the Super Bowl roster. Younger guy. So I have Lions, Vikings if they finally want to get, go get a young DB and not get another Patrick Peterson, or Raiders as well. Any of those three teams, like they're likely to spend money at corner on free agency. So I think those are ideal fits. He'll get the playing time. He'll probably get some dollars out of either the Lions or Raiders. And those are the three fits I see. These cornerback needy teams are kind of they're all the same, right? It's similar to how Bears need, all the O line, all the D line, like the teams are going to be the same.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I have the same exact teams. Maybe I would throw in a Jacksonville, depending if they can't get Bradbury or somebody. That would be a second or third option. Murphy Bunting, I could see that fitting well. But I think you pretty much nailed it. Like the quarterback needy teams, like the Raiders and the Lions that we keep mentioning. He's just a young guy that is going to be a good piece. He's not going to like change your defense drastically, but he's going to be consistent. He's going to show up. He's going to be good for you.
Yep. Moving on, last part of the free agency tier is the safeties, the other back end. First guy on the list, probably the biggest name, best name out there, CJ Gardner-Johnson, 25 years old. Yeah, Eagle, 6 interceptions this year, tied for first in the league. Yeah, what a year, what a year. I mean, I think everything points back to him coming back to Philly, whether it's a franchise tag or whether they get the deal done. But other teams I like for him, Miami Dolphins. He played at Florida. He's been down there, right? Go down, be in their secondary, and kind of fits the need there. And then the Cincinnati Bengals as well. If they lose Jesse Bates and they want to, plug in a guy with some swag to add to that team, add to a Joe Burrow, add to Jamar Chase, right? Who better to add than C.J. Gardner-Johnson on the defensive side to kind of bring that swagger? They'll have some money depending on what they do, whether it's offensive line, defensive line. If they don't do that and they want to fill the Jesse Bates gap, I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson plugs in nicely.
Yeah, I didn't think about him replacing Jesse Bates. I think that would work really well. Um, I don't think Howie lets Gardner Johnson leave the building. I think he's going to get signed. I think he's going to be an Eagle. The reason the Saints traded him is because they knew he was going to get a big payday. They didn't want to pay him. I think he's going to be an Eagle. If he's not an Eagle, Cincinnati makes a ton of sense to me as well. I think replacing Jesse Bates, because I'm pretty confident Jesse Bates will not be a Bengal, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So, like, yeah, Gardner Johnson as a Cincinnati Bengal or a Green Bay Packer, because I'm pretty confident the Packers are going to have their two starting safeties next year are going to be different than what they had. I think they're going to replace both.
Yep, for sure. So yeah, might as well bring up Jesse Bates, right? Jesse Bates gonna be a free agent, wanted a long-term deal. I think it was last year. I think he held out for a little bit as well. So I think he's out of Cincinnati too. I think he's priced himself out. Everything that I've read is all Falcons. I mean, I think most likely landing spots Falcons. For sure, for Jesse Bates, he'll get himself a nice payday, but I have the Raiders as well. They need safety. Corners bad. They need some safety help as well. And then Lions as well. They need some secondary help, the back end as well as corner. So if Jesse Bates wanted to get a payday and go there, but I think the Falcons is the most likely. He's going to get the most dollars. He's going to get everything that he wanted out of the Bengals, I think, from the Falcons. So I think I would pencil him in there for sure.
I like that quite a bit. I think there's scenarios where he could end up on other AFC contenders. We're going to talk about Jordan Poyer, but I don't think he's going to be a Buffalo Bill. And I could see a scenario where Jesse Bates goes in and replaces Jordan Poyer in Buffalo. That would be really interesting to me. Um, the other teams I have Miami down as an option, and then believe it or not, San Francisco. So the money is super tight in San Francisco, but they're going to move off quite a bit of their secondary. I think they're going to move off Jimmy Ward as he's getting older as well. So like a scenario like that, if they somehow got the money right, because Jesse Bates is going to be a big payday, I could see him replacing and plugging in on the Niners or the Bills. It's just a much tougher contract situation, but football wise, it'd be absolutely phenomenal if he replaced Jordan Poyer or just went in and replaced Jimmy Ward.
Yep, and this is where we kind of go down a tier. Juan Thornhill from the Chiefs. I think they're just not going to have enough money to bring him back. He's 27. They're going to say we can go out and get a piece. And that's a guy I slot in for the 49ers, right? He's going to be a cheaper option. You're not going to have to go out and spend a lot of money like you would for a Bates or a CJ Gardner Johnson. So I think if you slot Juan Thornhill in there, he had 3 interceptions this year. He's good on the back end. Can help that secondary. They're in need of help. The front's elite in San Francisco, but their corners and their safeties, older, not good. So him, Lions as well, and then Bengals. I think he could slot in right, as you said, guys that are going to slide around and go from contender to contender. Why not go from the Chiefs and say, hey, I'll go fill Jesse Bates' shoes. I'll go play, I'll go play for the Bengals, and I'll go face Pat Mahomes. I want to see what it looks like to face Pat Mahomes from the other side. I don't know if that's a good idea, but I think yeah, because the dollars and cents are going to be a little bit cheaper for a Juan Thornhill than it's going to be for a Bates or a CJ Gardner Johnson. So 49ers, Bengals, Lions for Juan Thornhill. I think he's definitely not going back to Kansas City though.
I don't think he's going to be a Chief either. I like those spots. One other team I have down is the Green Bay Packers again, because they're moving off their safeties. It's not Adrian Amos, and I forget the other one. They're moving off. They're going to have two different starting safeties. Juan Thornhill, when it comes to free agency, is one of the better options / choices. So I could easily see Green Bay being a destination for him as well.
Yep. And Jordan Poyer, as you mentioned earlier, probably out of Buffalo. He's an older guy. I do think he could. I mean, there's a world where he could go back, run it back for a 1 year with the Buffalo Bills. But I have Giants marked down. I also have Eagles as well in a world where we somehow lose CJ Gardner Johnson, lose Marcus Epps, right? I mean, we could probably the culture, the ability to win and compete for a championship could intrigue him to bring him into Philly. And then I also have 49ers as well, right? They're going to need help if they want to go, a step down dollars and cents wise from a Juan Thornhill, from a Bates, from a CJ Gardner Johnson. You can probably bring in Poyer for a little bit cheaper than a Juan Thornhill. So I think he matches up with that back end as well. Packers could be there too for Jordan Poyer. That cold weather, right? The cold weather vibes played in Buffalo. Green Bay is pretty damn similar. I would have to figure Rodgers would have to commit to coming back though to kind of lure a guy like that to Green Bay over a Jordan Love playing quarterback. But I think those teams fit Jordan Poyer as well. Veteran guy, good, productive safety.
Yeah, two other spots for him, which I don't think will happen. They're within division, but I think they just fit so well football wise. Is actually the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins. That's a really tough landing spot for Poyer, like for it to make sense financially. But football wise, I think they're phenomenal spots. And the only reason I would say one of the Texas teams, Houston for a rebuild or Dallas, is because Poyer is on the record of saying like he wants to play in a state with no income tax, which would also bring back Miami Dolphins into the equation, Texas and Miami. It's just those are just really tough destinations to see like legitimately working out financially.
Yeah. Did you know he was a former Eagles 7th round pick in 2013? Like I did not know that until I actually did some snooping up. But 4 interceptions, 31 years old. Yeah, Dallas could make sense too if they can make the money, and then Miami. I didn't pencil him in, but I like that one as well going down there. Cheaper, shorter term deal, right, to shore up the secondary. Last guy you had Von Bell. So I did some Von Bell research, and the only teams I could come up for is he either returns to Cincinnati or he goes to the Green Bay Packers. As you mentioned before, Adrian Amos is probably out. So Von Bell, I mean, it's likely. I also saw another article that said they're probably that the Bengals could be in good track to bring him back. If they lose Jesse Bates, they'll bring one of the two safeties back. So I think either returns to Cincinnati or the Green Bay Packers fits him. Will get a 3-year deal out of. I think either or he'll get a 3-year deal out of, and be financially secure. Any other landing spots for Von Bell?
Nope, those are the two, right? You're going back to Cincinnati or the Green Bay Packers. And once again, I think the Packers will have two different starting safeties. I think there's a scenario where they're both free agents, and they're two guys we just talked about. I think they could have a Chief and a Bengals uh, starting safety duo next year in Juan Thornhill and Von Bell. I don't think that's the craziest thing. It wouldn't be the most expensive duo. It also wouldn't be the best duo. But if they trade Aaron Rodgers or running out Jordan Love, I could definitely see a scenario where you got Von Bell and Thornhill. It'll definitely be different for Green Bay next year with their safeties, no matter what.
Facts. That's all the slides I have, man. Unless you got kickers and punters, if you want to sit here and talk about kickers or punters or rewrap and talk about quarterbacks, man, that's kind of like all the big names. I mean, I imagine we left out some names, and I mean that's just, I mean, you could sit here and talk free agency for 6 straight hours, right, and dive into every single player. We just really wanted to highlight, key guys at each position, the big names, the names that you're going to see March 15th come off the market, and ESPN actually post a notification for when they sign, right? So I mean, we didn't dive into the depths of free agency. But any other names, any other topics before we kind of wrap it up?
I don't know about any other names, but it will be fun to look back and see where these guys actually go based off all the teams we said. We gave a ton of options. We talked about a lot of names, but like we said at the start of the podcast, most of these guys we don't really know where they're going to go, and there's going to be some really surprising ones to where they sign with teams that weren't even on our radar. So it's going to be interesting to see in a couple weeks.
Exactly. I think I summed it up perfectly at the beginning. It's literally a crapshoot. It's going to be hilarious to create some shorts and go back and say, yeah, we were wrong on X, Y, Z. We were wrong on every single guy. I imagine we'll hit a couple, but a lot of wrong. So yeah, I mean that's gonna wrap it up for offseason podcast number 2. Thank you. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Drop any feedback, right? We did release a short the other day, right? If you like content like that, if we should do more of that, drop a comment, send us a tweet, right? If it sucked, tell us that too. We like any type of feedback, any other off-season topics that you want to hear. We're always down, to kick the tires on almost any NFL off-season topic. It could be crazy hypothetical stuff. It could be draft stuff, whatever content rings a bell and that people want to hear. I mean, I'm down to talk about. As always, Spotify link will be in the description. If you're audio only person, you can go listen to us and follow us on Spotify. And we will be back next week for offseason podcast number 3.